Good afternoon, this is Pastor Todd, and we are glad to have you with us. And we want to welcome you to our next conversation around the issue of racial reconciliation. This is the fourth conversation that we are having in the middle of 10 conversations around this topic. We have 10 conversations with 10 questions, and the goal of all these is to make a commitment to do something to dismantle racism in our country, in our communities, and come together as one in Christ. On our first session, we asked this question: what has been your experience with injustice in society? And then we asked the question, where have you seen overt and subtle racism? Last week we looked at the question, what are the roots of racism? And today we look at the ramifications of racism. What are the ramifications of racism? And we asked this question in the middle of a civil rights movement where we have seen before our very eyes many of the ramifications of racism. And today, as we ask this question, I have a dear sister in Christ. This is Shameka. I've known Shameka for over a decade now, and it's a joy to have her with us. This is a sharp young lady, a strong reader of life and a follower of Christ, most importantly. So today I'm going to ask her these questions. I'm going to ask her, what are the ramifications of racism on a person's self-image? What are the ramifications of racism upon the local community? And then upon the country. And after I've asked those questions of Shameka, I'm going to add just some insight on the ramifications of racism on the church. So, again, Shameka, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for sharing. So the first question is, what are some of the ramifications of racism that you've seen upon a person's self-image?
Well, it has a tendency to make you look at yourself differently because you're being treated differently by someone that happens to be of a different race. So it reaches the level of just being something real deep, for some people, because it's hard to see yourself past what you're being treated like, so it does attack your self-esteem a great deal. You just have to rely on your strength in that moment.
Amen. So how has that impacted you personally, even growing up, in your sense of self-worth, your self-image?
Well, for me personally, I was always taught to treat others like you would want to be treated in return. Mm-hmm. So I pretty much followed that into my adult life. So that has helped me, view myself, on a different level than some. And I know everybody don't fare off the same way, but I was very fortunate because of what I was taught that I'm open to deal with different races, deal with the racism that exists within my own race. So it made me a well-rounded person at best.
Amen. Excellent, excellent. And then secondly, this, what are the ramifications of racism that you've seen upon our local community?
In our community, it affects it a great deal because some people are taught that other races mean you no good, and they base that upon what they were taught and through their experiences, it has caused them to mistrust people of other races because they were done dirty, as I want to say, by other people of other race. So they have a tendency it becomes a generational curse, if I want to put it mildly. So some people, until they are upon a situation proven to show different, it makes them different. So living in poverty has made the racial thing more bigger than it has been anywhere else, because people are dealing with so much. So race is the root of all that, So it just takes people to have a different mindset to break the curse that is happening through race.
Good. So you mentioned it causes distrust, and it makes it even more difficult with a layer of poverty in someone's life as well.
Because it's hard to verify to a situation you can't say has happened for you. It's hard for you to believe that your race could be in a better standing than the next race when you're taught that that race is more superior to you. And some people, like I said, it's a generational curse, so it's hard for people to believe that this person of another race means well by me. Because this very same race did this to one of my family members. So sometimes the experience doesn't happen to you, but it had happened to someone you're close to. In the recent loss of my grandmother, I know she's seen things that I didn't have to experience. I know racism was very much alive when she was a young girl growing up.
Let me ask you a question. Living here in Watts, what have you seen some of the impacts of racism right here?
It's been, a huge impact because some people have moved here feeling like they're of a better race and standing than the ones who have already been here instead of it's causing more division than it's causing diversity. And that's the sadness of it.
So I hear you saying there's a sense that one race is feeling superior to the other race.
Yes.
And that's causing
a lot of division.
Division, okay. Next question here, and this is crazy, sadly crazy, the timing of this question with all that's going on. What have you seen some of the ramifications of racism upon our country?
It's really just hard to see it as a worldwide country thing because, in our communities, we're seeing the same thing, but it's really hard. But again, I can't reiterate the fact that, it's causing a lot of division with us, this hatred thing, because it's something that all races can verify to, as to where some just have other ways of dealing with it. You know what I'm saying? It's just like we're hearing the Black Lives Matter, and I'm one to say I feel like all lives matter, but I want my life to matter more. And it's not about racial at all. It's just about, to me, the common race, which is the human race, is the one that I want to see fare better. And not let, these things divide us.
Amen. Well, I appreciate who you are, just as a friend, as a person, as a woman of God, and your love has always been evident for all people. And boy, I think a person like yourself is an answer to part of the race issue going on in our country right now. So thanks for sharing. And I'll come back to you in a minute with how God has helped you. And you've already said some of these things, but how God has helped you to deal with racism, your relationship with God, how that's helped you. So I want to share just a few comments. I believe how racism has also, if we're really honest, how it's also impacted the church. It's interesting, in the year 2000, only about 3% of churches were considered multi-ethnic or diverse. Then in about 2010, that number has gone up, and to where about 10% of churches would be considered multi-ethnic. And yet at the same time, I think it's fair to say that Sunday mornings are still one of the most racially divided hours of the week. I worked a short